Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 14 of our 100 Day Challenge. So, yesterday I told you why her family asked. Today I'm telling you what to actually do about it. And I know I promised you the story of how my parents ended up running their own small business. Well, you're getting that tomorrow instead because I read every comment on yesterday's video. And what came through loudest wasn't disagreement. It was a question over and over in different words. Fine, but what's the number? How do I deal with the extended family? So we're doing that first because there's no point telling you how this ends until you know how to hold the line today. Yeah? Underneath that question, there was a fear and it showed up again and again. It doesn't matter what I give, the goalpost just keeps moving. I want to answer that directly because it is the most reasonable fear on the whole list. The goalposts move because you never set them. Think about what most of you are actually doing. A request comes in, you decide in that moment, yes or no. Then next month, another request, and you decide again. That's not a boundary, gentlemen. That's a negotiation every single month with someone who has more emotional leverage than you do in a language that you don't fully speak about a person you love. You will lose that negotiation, not because they're cruel, but because you're improvising and they are not. A boundary isn't a decision you make when the request arrives. It's a decision you make before it arrived. But before we get to your number, you need to understand something about the person asking. Because if you get this part wrong, every number you set is going to feel like a fight. She thinks you're rich, and she's not being greedy when she thinks it. She's doing math with half the information missing. Look at what she's working with. Minimum wage in this country runs from about 411 pesos a day in the poorest regions and up to 695 in Metro Manila. Full time, that's roughly 11 to 18,000 pesos a month. And more than half of this country, 56%, is poor or low income. Now you tell her you get $1,500 a month. She converts it. That's around 90,000 pesos in today's exchange rate. It's 5 to 8 times what she earns every month, guaranteed, without working. Of course, she thinks you're rich. By every measure she has never ever had access to, you are. And remember what I told you back on day 7? Ask around here and people will tell you 30,000 pesos a month is comfortable. I said that because I lived it. I told you yesterday when I got the Citibank job at 30,000 a month, I genuinely thought I had made it. So here's the thing you have to understand. She's not converting your life. She's converting your number. She has no idea what rent costs where you're from, or health insurance, or car insurance, or what the tax takes. She has never seen those numbers in her life, so they're not in her math, which brings me to the step that everyone should take, and it's the most important one in this whole process. You have to teach her your economics first. Everybody says set a boundary. Nobody says this. A boundary will not hold against a fantasy. If she still believes you're sitting on millions, then every no you give sounds like stinginess, not a limit, a choice. And she'll keep asking because in her mind, the money is right there. So don't argue with the assumption, replace it. I did this with my own family, and I'll tell you exactly how. I sat them down and explained what Dean actually earns and what it actually costs to be him. I told him he's an average wage earner, not a rich man. An ordinary wage there is an ordinary wage here. Same work, same hours, same tiredness at the end of the day. It just pays in a different currency. And yes, convert that number into pesos and it sounds enormous. But then I walked them through the rest: rent, tax, insurance, healthcare, child support. And what's left at the end of all that is not a fortune. There's some extra. There is nothing close to enough to fund a business or a house or everybody's emergencies. And I said, That's exactly like me at Citibank. I earned double what I'd ever earned in my life. There was extra, but there was never enough to build anything substantial. Now, some of you are already ahead of me thinking, hang on, if he's an ordinary earner, how are the two of you planning to do any of this? Well, that's a good question. Here's the honest answer. It isn't the paycheck. He got out of debt first, and then he spent years quietly putting whatever the paycheck had left over into investments, small amounts, for a long time, boring and relentless. So when I tell you to protect your own number before anyone else gets a single peso, that isn't theory to me. I'm looking at what it built. Well, that's a whole story of its own, and it's his to tell and not mine. He'll tell it on this channel one day, properly. But I'll give you the headline now because it matters more than anything else I've said today. The reason he can be generous is that he was disciplined first. Generosity isn't a feeling, it's something you can afford. Now, back to my family. The last piece of this sit down session, which made them understand the economics around it. So I told them the reason why Dean and I want to settle down here one day is because that same average income buys a real life in the Philippines. That's the entire point. But if the whole family arrives at the door, the cousins, the neighbors, the emergencies, that life disappears. And when he can't stay, nobody gets anything. So do that, please. Sit down and show her the real numbers, not to plead poverty, but to give her the information she's missing, because she cannot respect a limit she doesn't fully understand. All right, now the numbers, three steps in this order. So, step one, your comfort number comes first. Work out what you actually need every month to live the life that you came here for: rent, food, transport, healthcare. And I mean a real cushion, an emergency fund, rainy day money, something going into savings. That number is yours and hers, the household, and it is protected before anybody else gets a single peso. And Filipinas, I want to be clear with you because this will sound cold and it isn't. If he goes broke, everybody loses: her parents, all of it. A man who protects his own floor isn't being selfish. He's making himself useful for the next 20 years instead of the next two. Step two, the parents' allowance. Fixed amount, same every month. And here's the rule that matters most: it never scales with your income. It doesn't go up because you had a good year, because the moment it moves, it's negotiable again. And you're right back in the monthly negotiation you were trying to escape. Now, you asked me for a number, right? So here it is. Remember yesterday's card? The average Filipino pension is around 5,000 pesos a month, about $85. So $85 a month means you have replaced an entire retirement. That's the floor, and it's a real one. If you're comfortable, 150, 200 if you're doing well and you want to. And notice what that is against your own life. Yesterday, I showed you the average American car payment, $770 a month. So we are talking about a ninth of your car payment to fund two human beings' entire old age. And that's for parents. Welcome back to that. Step three, the help fund. And this is very important because here's what happens even with a perfect allowance. Somebody's phone breaks, a cousin's kids needs money for a school project, somebody gets sick, little things constantly, and none of them are outrageous on their own. So you set aside a small amount every month, say 2,000 pesos. You can decide on your number. That's the help fund. When something small comes up, it comes out of there. And when it's empty, the answer is no. Now listen to why that changes everything. Without the fund, every no is personal. It's you deciding this person isn't worth it. It's a judgment. And it stings and it gets remembered and it gets talked about at every family gathering for years. With the fund, no isn't a judgment. It's simple. The help money is gone this month. That's not "I don't love you." That's not "I don't care about your mother." It's just The bucket is empty and there'll be more next month. You have effectively taken the most painful sentence in this entire relationship and turned it into a fact about a bucket. That is worth far more than 2,000 pesos. I do this in my own life. I keep separate accounts, living expenses, investment, tithe, my own rainy day fund, and a family fund. Every peso has a job before the month starts. Nobody argues about anything because it's already decided. Now, the part that came up more than anything else in yesterday's comments, because the anger wasn't really about her parents. I don't mind helping her mother. I mind the 28-year-old brother and the cousins who won't get a job. And you're right, let me draw the line the way I drew it on my own family. Parents are non negotiable. They raised her. Most of them have no pension. They're old, and there is genuinely nothing behind them. That was yesterday's whole episode, and I stand by every word of it. Able bodied adults who won't pull their weight are a completely different thing. That is not utang na loob. That is not culture, even. That's somebody who found a source and stopped trying. And here's what I want the Filipinas to hear, because we don't say this to each other. When you fund a grown, healthy sibling indefinitely, you are not helping him. You are enabling his laziness because you are removing the pressure that would have made him figure it out. You are buying his comfort with your husband's years. Now, there's a middle path, and gentlemen, this one's for you. If a family member genuinely can't contribute money, they can contribute something else like time, labor, watching the kids, helping with the house, the farm, the business, actual work. Because the problem was never that they have nothing. The problem is when they give nothing. Now, the mechanics, and this one is simple and it is absolute. You never negotiate with her family about money. Ever. She does. And here's why, and it isn't about your feelings. When a foreign man says no to a Filipino family, it doesn't land as a limit, it lands as an insult. He looks down on us. He thinks we're beggars. And that story will travel through that family for years, and she is the one who has to live inside it. When a daughter says no, it's a family matter. Uncomfortable, yes, but normal. Families do this. So the two of you agree the number privately, together, and then she carries it. In Filipinas, this is exactly what I described on day 7. The woman who quietly stands between her husband and her family. Except now, it isn't a secret you're keeping from him. It's a decision you made with him. And that protects you too, because there's a huge difference between these two phrases. We decided is an armor, whereas he said no makes you a hostage in your own marriage. And I know some of you are thinking, that's fine in theory, but you can't actually say no here. It isn't done. I know, it does feel like an endless battlefield. You can, and it's going to cost me something to prove it to you. My family was the ultimate nice guy of our entire neighborhood. Every year, the fiesta and Christmas, and my eldest brother would take out a loan against his salary, twice a year to fund it. And he would spend the next 1 year to repay that. And he did it for so many years. And every celebration, it was a spread, nothing less than a lechon on that table. My mother, my father, and brother would start cooking at 3 in the morning. 3 a.m., feeding half the barangay. And they came, all of them, neighbors, relatives, everyone, ate everything, took food home with them, and even plates and utensils. And by evening time, my mother was destroyed, still standing at the sink washing dishes. And in all those years, not one of those families ever invited us to anything of theirs, not once. They were good to us exactly as long as we had something to give. So when I finally left for Metro Manila to work, you know the ritual. Everyone expects pasalubong. You came home from the city with boxes and bags. Clothes, soap, shampoo, delicacies. That's what every girl I grew up with did when she came home from working as a housemaid or store clerk in Manila. It's the same thing as an OFW's balikbayan box. So the first time I came home, I didn't take anything but my own clothes. That's it, no pasalubongs. And they were all dismayed. The neighbors, the relatives, even my own siblings. Where's ours? I told them, only my clothes fit in the overhead bin. I'm sorry. And I told my mother the truth. I would rather hand you and dad a few thousand pesos for food than spend it pleasing people who have never once contributed anything to your life. Now, was that easy? No, the first time was awful. But here's what I learned, and it's the whole reason I'm telling you this. Saying no is a skill you build that gets better with time. It is not a personality. It's uncomfortable for about 3 months, and then it's just how things are. And the sky did not fall. My family is still here. I still love them, and they love me. Well, the entitled extended family and neighbors were gone. So to me, that's a huge win. All right, both of you, come over here, please. Gentlemen first. Some of you don't want a boundary. You want an excuse. You want me to hand you a rule that lets you give nothing and still feel like a good man. That is not what this is. A boundary is a number you commit to and honor. It's not a wall with your wife standing behind it. And if you genuinely believe all of this is unreasonable, fine, that's your right. Nobody is forcing you. But then don't marry her, because if you marry her planning to give nothing, you have put resentment in that room on day one. And resentment charges interest. It never stays the size it started at. It comes out eventually, usually over something that isn't about money. So if that's you, live here on your pension, on your own, and build a genuinely good life. The communities that I showed you on day 11 will give you a good head start. Put your energy into that instead. That is not a failure, because there are worse things than being alone. And one of them is a marriage where somebody is always keeping score. And here's another one. Some of you do the opposite. You give so generously, and then you make sure everybody knows where it came from. You bring it up in arguments, you let it hang in the air at family dinners. That's not generosity, that's leverage. And she knows it, and so do they. Now, as Filipinas, and I won't be soft about this either, to the daughter who can't say no because she needs to be seen as the good one, I understand it. I know you don't want to rock the boat. I was you. But your silence today is his resentment in 6 years. Say the number out loud now while it's still a conversation and not a wound. So the siblings, the cousins, the ones who watch a foreigner walk into the family and immediately start calculating, understand what you're actually doing. You are not asking a rich man for help. You are taking years off your sister's marriage, and one day she'll be standing in the wreckage of it, alone, and not one of you will be there. And to the woman who wants a boundary but wants him to enforce it, so she never has to be the bad guy, no, it's your family, it's your voice. He can hold the number, but you have to say it. So let's wrap this up. A boundary is not the opposite of generosity. It's the container that makes generosity possible. Without it, every peso you give is a payment on a debt that never shrinks, and you will resent every one of them. With it, that same peso is a gift. Same money, completely different thing happening inside you. And decide it now, before the wedding, before the visa, before her father gets sick and you're making the biggest financial decision of your marriage at 2 in the morning in a hospital corridor. Have the boring conversations while it's still boring. So today, work out your number. Not the number that sounds generous, not the one you'd say out loud to look good. The number you could send every single month for the rest of your life and never once feel resentful about it. That's your number. That's the one that will hold. Tell me below what it is and let me know if you think I'm wrong. I read all of them. And tomorrow, as promised, I'll show you how this actually ends, where you're not paying an allowance forever, where her parents stop asking, not because you said no, but because they don't need to ask anymore. Just like my parents. I'll tell you exactly how that happened, what it caused, and the one hard rule that made it work. So for now, come, walk with me.